Welcome to the Real Estate Mentor Podcast. I am your host, Jonathan Klunk. We are the #1 real estate mentorship podcast online today, and we make it a point of interviewing some of the top minds in real estate to provide you with actionable tips that you can take away today and implement into your real estate business to really grow generational wealth. Today, I am very happy to have Cora Henderson with us. She is a partner and attorney at Pitt Frank here in Louisville. They are licensed in several states, including Indiana, North Carolina, New York, and others. And she is a wealth of real estate information and always my go-to whenever I have a question about anything real estate related. And she always has the answer. I'm so happy to have her on here today. And we are going to be discussing office conversions. Have you all been watching the news to see what's going on with the office culture? There are major buildings and major markets that are sitting nearly vacant with billions of loans coming due this year. There's a lot that's up in the air. And so a lot of people are thinking, what am I going to do with these buildings? And it provides a great opportunity for investors who already own these properties or people who are looking to get into that space as well through an acquisition. So Cora, thank you so much for joining us today. I can't wait to talk about this very hot topic.
Thank you, Jonathan. I am thrilled to be here, and I'm so happy that you have this podcast. It's so important for us to surround ourselves with other professionals and mentors that we can speak intelligently about the real estate industry, because boy, oh boy, we've got some changes coming up in the next couple of years, and with changes come opportunity.
Absolutely. So let's dig right into this and tell me what your thoughts are. What does the landscape look like right now across the country with the office sector?
Sure. So as you indicated earlier, we've got kind of a serious mess on our hands regarding some distressed properties. As you're well aware, COVID probably didn't help out things. I think a lot of people not only worked from home during that period, probably never returned to the office. And at least in the uncertain future, I don't know that we'll ever see that again. I don't know that office users are going to require the type of space, the number of square footage like we've seen in the past. So when you talked about loans becoming due, I think that coupled with the need for less space with office users puts us in this conundrum. Real briefly here, $1 trillion in commercial real estate loans, by the way, $1 trillion with a T, is becoming due over the next 2 years.
The number's gone up.
It's huge. So couple that with fewer bridge options, lower valuations, lower interest rate opportunities, and you got yourselves kind of, again, that conundrum that you're facing. So what do we do with all of that? We've got a lot of empty space. We've got less loan opportunities. We've got less office users, and we've got these gorgeous buildings. And then take that with all of these amazing first-time home buyers, all of these amazing residents in our society who need places to live. And so it's really not a stretch to think, what if we reinvent that space? We recreate that space for a better user. If it's not the office user, maybe it's the multifamily user. So what does that look like for your investors, and how can they be a part of that major opportunity to seize some of that vacant office space and begin that conversion process?
Yes, and let's take this piece by piece because there is a lot there to unpack. First and foremost, you talk about potential investment opportunities. We have people who already are holding these assets. Maybe their loan isn't coming due, and so they can take a look and see what is the best and highest use for their property. It may no longer be office if number one, it's sitting vacant, or number two, there's so much availability that cost per square foot is starting to go down. I know here in Louisville, we sold a major skyscraper in downtown Louisville for like $9 million a couple of years ago. That was unheard of to me. So valuations will definitely start to go down if office remains the best and highest use and there's high vacancy there.
Absolutely. You mentioned here in the Louisville area, I know Business First had published that more than 55,000 housing units could be added in old office buildings in the United States. So again, we're talking about residential units being converted from office buildings across the country. And this is happening at a record level. Cities and developers are looking for new ways to reimagine all of this office space that's been sitting vacant, particularly in our downtown areas in the U.S. Just to kind of give you a grasp of the numbers here, between 2021 and 2024, the number of apartments scheduled for conversion from office space has grown from that 12,000-ish number to over 55,000. And that was in Rent
Wow.
Cafe, which is a part of the Yardi systems. So you can see the rate that it's growing is exponential, which again comes full circle on that opportunity for all you investors watching.
Absolutely. And, in some areas of the country, like New York City, it's almost a necessity. They just created a complete ban on all non-owner occupied short-term rentals because of their housing shortage. And now I think they have about 44 to 46 different office buildings that qualify that are in various stages of planning to become mixed use or primarily residential. And I think that there are going to be a lot of local tax incentives as well as at some point federal to help with that. And especially in the affordable housing sector, I think that this could be a great opportunity for people who operate in that space to look to federal government programs once they're announced to convert these buildings to more affordable housing as well.
You are absolutely right. I think that's brilliant. So what do we face? What are the challenges we face for investors when we're taking that office space and we're looking to convert that into multifamily? Well, a couple of things come to mind. I think first and foremost, you mentioned government programs that might be available. Clearly, we'd have to make sure that the zoning was corrected so that we could have those multifamily units. But as you kind of hinted, if we're able to partner with our governmental agencies, if they're providing certain tax breaks, they want to see that downtown area revitalized and that office space repurposed for a better use, especially when we have people who need homes. I think I would hope that they would work with us and therefore that zoning would be achievable. Secondly, of course, nothing comes easy without a great cost. And certainly the office spaces, there's going to be a cost with rehabbing that. So do we have to, well, we will have to have those HVAC units and the venting in place, in order to properly convert that to multifamily.
Plumbing, offices right now,
Absolutely.
they're really known for having one bank of bathrooms on a floor or just 1 to 2 bathrooms per office. But if we're subdividing all of this into individual housing units, they're going to have at least one bathroom in there. And that means going into the concrete, which is what a lot of these buildings are made of, and etching that out. This is not going to be an inexpensive conversion because with new construction or in the residential space, I think, the saying goes, it's a lot easier to build new than it is to remodel with all the complications that come up, the unexpected, unforeseen costs that you get. So we're at $220 maybe a square foot for a lot of new construction today. My guess is that this is probably going to be more expensive than that to do the reconversions.
And that very well may be the case. And so again, I think having that participation on a government level, whether it be through certain loan programs, some discounted loans that are available, as well as, the zoning pushes and just really supporting these types of projects are going to be instrumental, because otherwise, is it just going to sit vacant? And nobody wants that.
Nobody wants that.
What's interesting, Jonathan, is we talk about rehabbing these, but let's pause for a second and talk about new apartments, because we're seeing them go up everywhere. I mean, it's project after project, and new construction, there's always a need for that. But here across the bridge from Louisville in southern Indiana, the new Albany mayor just recently proposed and recommended a moratorium on new apartments.
Yeah. They must have a lot over there. I mean, a moratorium is kind of a big deal. It's like that's saying, let's pause for a second because we feel that we have an issue on our hands. So does that mean they have an oversupply?
Good question. I think at least it seems to be his intent, is to really preserve the land that's still available for first-time home buyers. So again, just because we're talking about multifamily, we're talking about apartments, doesn't mean that it's rentals, okay? Because we can buy these apartments. These can be for our first-time home buyers. So if we're packaging these investment opportunities to really fill the void in a number of different areas, the office space vacancy, the availability of homes for first-time home buyers, that's where I think you're going to see a win. Because where other new projects for apartment might be put on hold, where other halting of issuance of short-term rental permits, you're seeing that put on hold. I think it really could create a perfect storm for the sale of these units once it's converted from the office space.
Absolutely. And, I think that probably going apartments first is the best first step, because I've seen a lot of lenders who are very leery to provide financing to condo projects, which I think is kind of what you're getting at. However, once you have apartments, once that's leased up, it's a lot easier to then work with your lender to convert those to condos where the developer of the building has ownership of all of them. But as they become vacant, you can then sell those to first-time home buyers or to people who would like to live down there so they can have ownership of those. But I know that condos are difficult to start with, but this could be maybe a nice long-term plan, especially in some of these cities, to really encourage home ownership as well. But, this might be where we need to start for financing.
And that is what makes you such a perfect real estate professional to partner with for these investors, because you've walked the walk.
Thank you.
You understand that. You get that. Hey, press the pause button. Let's put this in our proposal for our investors. If we're going to have a syndicate, we're going to have a group of investors. We can say this is our long game. But I know from my experience that it is easier to have bodies in those units, to have them occupied, to get the financing necessary in order to maintain that home ownership or sell that off as a condo regime in the future. So I love that you've walked the walk. You understand what that journey looks like. And that's one of the million ways that you can create value for your clients and customers.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate it. And that's why I love doing this podcast is I learn something from everyone that I speak to. I don't just bring on people to talk about topics that I know about. I know a little bit about it. I can contribute something, but I get to ask questions and hear directly from them what's going on in the market. And I feel like that does help improve my abilities as an agent and ability to help my clients. So that's kind of what the landscape looks like right now. Let's focus on those loans that are coming due. $1 trillion in the next few years is nothing to sneeze at. I've already seen some major reacquisitions from banks. They've gone in, initiated foreclosure proceedings because some major investors aren't even able to make the monthly interest payment on the loan. It might be interest only. So these assets are sitting on bank balance sheets. Some of these banks are smaller regional banks that over the years they have, leaned towards catering towards commercial clients and commercial deals like this. And so now they're really heavy in this asset area, and that's not going to look good on their balance sheets when they don't have the revenue coming in from the payments. They have to go seize the property. Like you said, the value has already decreased because of, office lease rates and lease percentages. So the asset that they loaned on is not the value of the asset that they're going to be taking possession of. And they're also not having any revenue coming in from that. So I think that this is going to put some banks in a pretty bad position, and other larger banks who aren't in that position don't necessarily want to put their skin in the game now and hope for a better result whenever it's being demonstrated that this is maybe not something to be heavily invested in right now, just from a lending perspective.
Absolutely. I would entirely concur with that. And to inflate those building values currently to make the banks happy, we're seeing a lot of landlords offer cash discounts, discounted loans. I think you can see there was some skepticism recently in the Wall Street Journal about the value of the 245 Park Avenue sale there in Manhattan. So, we're seeing it across the country. But again, with all of that concern, with all of that uncertainty, we really have to pivot. And office space isn't, speaking of pivoting, one of the ways that we necessarily have to move forward. There are a number of different opportunities that we can pivot. So whether it's office space conversions or finding that best use and starting them out as apartments, converting them in the long game to condominiums, or let's talk a little bit about energy. So solar energy, wind farms, data centers. All of that is booming as well. It just signifies the last number of years and how our society has changed and the need for artificial intelligence and just so much going on that creates, again, an opportunity that maybe wasn't formally focused on in the last number of years. So you really gotta pivot. You gotta embrace that innovation. You gotta embrace that change and figure out, before everyone else does, what might be a good investment for you to create that generational wealth.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad that you said data center, because my background is in technology sales. That's what I did before I got into real estate. And I was on the carrier side. So I worked with some Fortune 500 companies in the telecom space. And, I think that people might be surprised even to know the number of buildings downtown in a major city that don't have people in them, that they serve as data centers, either for the federal government, for the FBI, also central offices for telecom companies like AT&T, that local exchange carrier that's there. If you ever see a building that doesn't have windows on the outside of it or on one side, that's likely what it is. They have a lot of power going into it. They have a lot of redundancy built into their architecture and infrastructure, and they're very secure buildings. So as telecom doesn't really need central offices anymore as much, because we're not making individual phone calls that have to be routed to area codes and then your local exchange. Everything is internet based now. So they're going to have a lot of real estate that they could potentially let up that they're not using for that internet traffic. And the cloud, I can't listen to a single podcast today without receiving an ad for some sort of cloud computing, cloud storage. And it used to just be for big companies, but now it's even for the smallest company. Even me in our business, everything is cloud-based. We use Google for that. And all of my emails, all of my pictures, all of my documents are all in the cloud. So every single one of us is a user of the cloud today. And that is only going to grow, especially with the introduction of AI, which requires a lot of computing power, and with Bitcoin mining and all of the other mining as cryptocurrency continues to grow. But right now it seems that, the trend is to find vacant land and to build this huge building, this huge data center. But we might have another opportunity for some interesting conversions as well outside of the residential space.
Excellent point. And I guess I never really thought about that, but you're right. And I love that your background really helps facilitate those types of transactions, because a lot of us, myself included, I'm not the best tech person. Just ask my 14-year-old who laughed at me. We were at a fast food restaurant. I was in the drive-thru and I thought it was a lovely voice that came on. I thought she was talking to me and asking me to do certain things. And I was talking back and he said, "Mom, that's an NPC." I was like, "Oh, you mean an NPC?" He goes, "No, N, non-player character. It's a robot, Mom." And I thought, really? I was talking to a robot? Had no idea. I pulled around the drive-thru. Sure was. I was talking to a robot. I was carrying on a conversation. So,
Wow.
it is everywhere. And so I guess people don't realize that behind that curtain, there's got to be server after server, like a server farm. We've seen $6, $7, $8 billion invested from Blackstone to Digital Realty to Vantage data centers. And it's just all over the world to secure that space to house that, because AI boom is upon us. I have to brag, though, on our community, Jonathan, because here in our community, just right across the bridge there in southern Indiana, which is a real hot spot right now, the River Ridge area for such warehousing.
Warehouse and manufacturing, yeah.
Yes, a Canadian solar building. They are building a new $800 million solar cell manufacturing facility there. Additionally, did you see that Meta bought, I think to the tune of a similar number there, a multi-million-dollar project also slated there for southern Indiana? So,
River Ridge, really?
Yes, River Ridge has got it going on.
Speaking of Meta, thank God I just bought their stock. I mean, they had the biggest single-day surge in history. I don't know how that happened.
Wow.
But yeah, that investment, and I'm also invested in NVIDIA, and that's another killer AI stock. They're really going to dominate not only, some of this real estate space with their needs, but also the stock market as well. So I think that they're coming out swinging full force, and we're going to see ripple effects in so many different industries. They might become the banks. Who knows, for people who want to do these conversions.
Phew, I tell you, it sounds like a triple threat. All right, so pivot one more time to energy projects with me. We talked about the battery plants. I did recently, when I had gotten the report of the office sector and the 1 trillion, I recently took an American Land Title Association webinar put on by one of our amazing underwriters at First American. And so it was kind of a snapshot of where we're going in 2024 and the years beyond. But they also talked about solar and battery project investments. Battery project, they said, is expected to grow $25 billion over the next few years. But wait, they said solar is actually the fastest growing technology. They said that means about $30 billion in investment. So again, great opportunities there. But something we have to keep in mind, and I know you're no stranger to this, is that the average lifespan of a new build energy project are about 2 years beginning to end. Wind farms, even longer, probably about 5 years. They're unique. They're complex. the acquisition of raw land or ground up construction. It's got to meet the sale and the finance of certain existing projects. If you're going to do a conversion, it's very expensive. And from the title side, which is kind of where I live and breathe, there's going to be a lot of custom endorsements, lots of add-on endorsements required. So even though this is the future, it's so important that you align yourself with the right professionals to guide you through that process, because it is complex. It is unique. And so finding that right person who has that multi-layer experience like you, Jonathan, that's going to be clutch for these types of investors.
I appreciate that. And of course, we're only as good as the people who stand behind us like you, which is why I come to you with all of my questions, real estate related. This has been a fantastic conversation. Is there anything else that we haven't discussed that you would like to address before we end the podcast, or any final words for the people who are listening?
I would say the final words is just always remember to learn. That's how we're growing, right? Is we're reading, we're educating ourselves, we're aligning ourselves with other professionals who go above and beyond, that understand not only the current trends, but what's ahead of the market. And so, it's really who you surround yourself with. And it does take a village, Jonathan. I appreciate the acknowledgement there. We are only so good at what we do. And then the rest, again, we have to rely on our circle of professionals to bring our dreams to fruition. So if you have a dream, if you are an investor, if you want to be an investor, now is the time. There's a lot of exciting opportunities. You just have to know where to look.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for coming on today to talk about these trends. I think that they're incredibly important, and, not just large scale. Local investors can take advantage of a lot of these as well. There are office buildings out there that aren't skyscrapers that will be ripe for acquisition or conversion if you currently own them as well. So if you have any questions about that, you would like to continue the conversation, please reach out to me on Instagram at Top Louisville Realtor. You can also visit our website and our blog for a lot more information at gokeysource.com. Again, thank you so much for tuning in today to join us on the Real Estate Mentor Podcast, the #1 real estate mentorship podcast on the internet today. And Cora Henderson, thank you for joining us, partner at Pitt Frank. We look forward to having you back in the future to talk more about the law of real estate, which is also a very important topic.